Blog Talk Radio.
The Chamo Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit Neye AMANSEM Da Medinde Ojirapo Kwesi Rane Pata Akan Akamumai Amaruka Etipi Mu Ojiramai Mu. Greetings to all Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit people, many African Black people today. It's AMANSEM Day, Affairs of the Nation Day. My name is Ojirapo Kwesi Rane Pata Akan. Ojirapo be our common nation within North America, within Ojiramai, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, people in the Western Hemisphere. Yet I say, we thank you for tuning into the broadcast. Once again, we've opened up the chat room. If you have a question or a comment and you would like to interact in the chat room, you must log in as a user in order to interact in the chat room. If you do not have a username, you can sign up for one quickly in Blog Talk so that you can interact. If you have a question or a comment on the phone line, simply hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised and so we can interact. So we're going to put some links in the chat room right now. We're going to put a link to our Hoodoo Nation Festival page, as well as the publications page and our network page. And as we're putting that information in, you see those links. So for individuals who are new to the broadcast, we have 4 broadcasts on a weekly basis. We have returned to our regular broadcasting schedule. On Joda, Monday night, we have Akanbo Nanasom, Ancient Authentic Akan Ancestral Religion, where we deal specifically with the Akan expression of ancestral religion. First, because we are Akan. Secondly, because of the misinformation being propagated regarding Akan religion, philosophy, culture, cosmology, ritual practice, and so forth. From individuals in the Western Hemisphere who have been infected with white culture, as well as individuals in Afuraitkaitnit, in Ghana, Ivory Coast, who have been infected with white culture. And therefore, those infections have corrupted their presentation of the culture. So we talk about ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion, going back to our Akan land, which is a title of ancient Nubia in Kemet. So we show that in our publication. When our people migrated from the Kan land, Kanat, Empire, Kanat, Ghana, and moved west to the western part of the continent, reestablished the Kanat Empire, Ghana Empire, in West Afuraitkaitnit a couple of thousand years ago, we perpetuated the culture. When centuries later we moved further south towards the forest belt, towards the region of today's Ghana and Ivory Coast, we reestablished a Kana civilization. And hundreds of years later, when our people were forced, some of us, into the Western Hemisphere during the Musuo Ketie, the Great Diversity of the Enslavement era, we ended up in the Western Hemisphere. This is how Akan people came from ancient East Afuraitkaitnit to West Afuraitkaitnit, Africa, to the Western Hemisphere, North Central South America, the Caribbean, and Europe. We maintained our ancestral religious tradition, and thus the Akan ancestral religion in North America became popularly known and is still popularly known as Kudu, from the Akan term Undu, meaning medicine, from roots, plants, trees, plant life, mineral life, and so forth. It also means to become heavy with the spirit through spirit possession and spirit communication. Possession from the Abosom, the deities, the forces in nature, divinities, the goddesses and gods, and possession from the Nananom Samanto, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors of our direct blood circle. So we deal with that tradition on Monday night. On Tuesday night, Benada, Abinada, Tuesdays, we have Ojira, purification. We talk about Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African ancestral religion in general, not just the Akan expression, but wherever we exist in the world. Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African ancestral religion, which we call Nanasom, is fundamentally the same. The ritual incorporation of divine law, the ritual restoration of divine balance, that is the essence of ancestral religion. Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African Ancestral Religion. Through ritual, we incorporate those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to incorporate in order to harmonize our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And through ritual, we reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to reject in order to restore balance to our thoughts, intentions, and actions, and thus realign ourselves with divine order. So the ritual incorporation of divine law, the ritual restoration of divine balance are the expansive and contractive poles of ancestral religion, of Nanasom. Ojira, purification, operationalizes Nanasom. Purification operationalizes our practice of ritually incorporating law, ritually restoring balance, so that we can align every thought, every intention, and every action, every moment of every day with divine order that is our culture, and it's animated by ancestral religion. We make mistakes. We need to learn. We incorporate law and restore balance through ritual so we can move forward in a harmonious fashion. So we deal with the purification of the culture on Ojira, the Ojira broadcast, purification broadcast, purifying concepts, culture, ritual, our condition. We deal with text from ancient commandments as well as orature, oral text, and so forth from our ancestral religious traditions wherever we exist on the continent as well as in the Western Hemisphere, including Hoodoo, which is the Afghan tradition in North America, Juju, which is the Yoruba tradition in North America, Gregory, which is the Bambara tradition in North America, Hoodoo, which is the Fon and Ebe traditions in North America, Wanga, which is the Obambo and other Gullah traditions in North America, and Gangan, which is the Fang tradition in North America, and so forth. So this is what we deal with on Ojira broadcast. On Awukuda, Akoda Wednesday nights, we have Egua Marketplace. We showcase a business, organization, or institution on a weekly basis. Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit businesses, organizations, and institutions that are serving our community in a positive capacity and also maintain their ancestral religious values in the context of that service. You see on our page the list of businesses, organizations, and institutions we have interviewed, and you can see the links to the interviews they did with us, 2 hour interviews with us. We're going to have more coming on a regular basis, on a weekly basis. We also talk about our Okom economic development model that is the basis of that Egua Marketplace show. We have published that model, an approach to economic development rooted in ancestral religious values, so it's a holistic approach. And when we talk about that model, and we publish that, you can download that from the Okom page on our website. Part of the strategy that we use in our economic development model, Okom, is to starve the beast and feed the pride. That means we make an assessment on a weekly basis to determine what funds we would have potentially wasted with the whites and their offspring, and then we starve the beast and feed the pride. We reallocate those funds away from the white businesses and direct them to the business, organization, or institution of the week. We have targeted one black business, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit business, organization, institution per week for 52 weeks for optimal capital infusion. When we engage that process, we're redirecting those funds away from those white businesses. And if you take $10 away from a white business through the course of a week and place that within a black business, that's a transfer of $10. When 1,000 people do that, that's a $10,000 transfer of capital from white businesses directly back to black business. When we engage that process, rerouting money away from CVS and Walmart and different places and into the black businesses, an infusion of $10,000 will allow that black business to hire people immediately in the same week in the business, serve us at a higher capacity, at a greater capacity, expand their product lines, their services to us, and it's a win-win situation. If we do not engage that process, then by default, we then leave those thousands of dollars in the hands of the whites and their offspring, our absolute enemies. And they empower themselves, and we finance our own oppression. Starve the beast and feed the pride. When you look at the Okom Economic Development Model page, you see the list of businesses, organizations, and institutions. And this particular week, the institution of the week for this week is our Hoodoo Mind, Hoodoo Nation Festival. That is because it is coming up this weekend. So this weekend, Awusida, Sunday, October 16th, here in Washington, D.C. from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. is our Hoodoo Mind, Hoodoo Nation Festival. It is a free event. It is open to Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, African Black people only. Registration is required. Registration is free. You can simply register by going to our Hoodoo Mind, Hoodoo Nation Festival page on our website or on Facebook and register via the Facebook notification that we have for the event notification. Also on our Ojira Mind social media network. You can register there as well in the event notification there as well. So we will have presenters talking about different aspects of the Hoodoo tradition. We released the video trailer with the presenters. We'll be presenting as well as two other presenters, Ama Asase Aje out of Florida, talking about her business Asase Heals and her approach to extracting medicine from plant life and mineral life and so forth under the guidance of the Abosom and the Nananom and Samanko, and creating tinctures, medicines to heal our people. And she's been doing that for years. We're going to talk about that hoodoo, that root medicine, that root work and so forth. And then we have Afia Asase Bretuo, who will be talking about Asumai, the ritual use of Asumai, which is a Akan term for talismans, amulets that are impregnated with Tumi, divine power, of the Abosom, the forces in nature, of the Nananum Intamako, our spiritually cultivated ancestors, utilized for our own healing, for our own elevation, for our own protection, for our own defense against our enemies. So we'll have a number of presentations throughout the day. We will also have our Egua marketplace, our vendors available all day long so you can shop with our vendors, including live vegan food, artwork, handcrafted jewelry and so forth, natural soaps, shea butters, body products, bath products and so forth, clothing, artwork, a number of different things, a number of different vendors. And all that information is on the Hoodoo Mind, Hoodoo Nation page. We also have a couple of spaces that have opened up because of some cancellations last minute with regard to vending. So if you would like to vend, go to the Hoodoo Mind page. We provide 1/6 of the table and 2 chairs. The vending fee is $30 for the entire day, for the entire 8 hours. All of that information is on the page. You can go directly to the page, download the vending registration application, and also make the payment right there on the page. We will also be passing out our Hoodoo Mind, Hoodoo Nation journal, which we will be publishing and releasing that day. So articles on the Hoodoo tradition, also including all the information with regard to the vendors and other Black businesses in the business directory in the book. If you would like to place an ad, today is the last day. If you'd like to place an ad in our Hoodoo Mind journal, you must send the JPEG files today because we have to go to print tomorrow. So send the JPEG files today, and all that information is on the Hoodoo Mind, Hoodoo Nation page. Please share that information, share the video, the trailers with your contacts on Facebook. Again, the event is free. We will be giving away a free copy of the Hoodoo Mind book to everyone who attends, and we do that at all of our events. So that's going to be taking place once again, Awusida, this Sunday, Hoodoo Mind, Hoodoo Nation Festival from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Free event here in Washington, D.C. Okay. So for tonight's show, AMANSEM means affairs of the nation. Oman in the Akan language means nation. Asem means affairs or issues. And we're talking about Ojira Man, the purified Ojira Oman, nation. Oman also means Western Hemisphere, land of the setting sun. So when we designate our people in the Western Hemisphere, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, African people, Black people, in the Western Hemisphere. The term Oman and Akan means nation. It also means Western Hemisphere, land of the setting sun. It means the same thing in the language of ancient Enkamet, Nubian Egypt. In the Medusa, you'll find Mine meaning nation, polity, municipality. Mine also means land of the setting sun, the west. And Jira means purification, purified. So Ojira Mine is the purified. Jira mind, nation, mind in the Western Hemisphere, the land of the setting sun. We are those who, through the Musuo Ketie, the great diversity, the enslavement era, were forced into the Western Hemisphere, the extreme west of Afuraitkaitnit, in the land of the setting sun. However, we have purified ourselves, reconstituted ourselves, reestablished our ancestral culture, and are engaging the process of Amanie, which is nationism, which is the purification of nationalism. We had our Ojidama and Afashe, our purified nation, Afashe, or festival conference in June. That's an annual conference around the summer solstice. We had the first annual conference this past June, and we were talking about Ojidama, the purified nation, and Amanie, nationism, the purification of nationalism. Our book, Ojidama and Afashe, goes into detail about these concepts and the 7 principal values of nation building, methods of food production and preservation, methods of curing disease, establishing a military structure, establishing institutions, training institutions, educational institutions, ritual, cultural, spiritual, religious institutions, establishing sound systems of governance and jurisprudence, the manufacturing and building of homes and other buildings on acquired land, and the manufacturing of clothing through the use of textiles and so forth. These 7 principal values of nation building, Amansesu, are key to Amanie nationism, the purification of nationalism. When we talk about nationism, we're talking about the nation, the Oman being a living, breathing entity with a spirit that governs it. And we as cells within that great organ called a nation, which is governed by a collective spirit, specific boson forces in nature. When we are cells operating within that entity, we function together harmoniously, just like the cells in your organs. They serve the organ of which they are a component part. They're part of an entity. And that organ is like a nation, an entity, and the cells are integral parts of that entity, that living entity that has a spirit that governs. We understand the spiritual nature of an Oman, a nation, and we move forward in that fashion to establish nation building. Then we're dealing with a nation that's the purification of nationalism. We talk about secular nationalism that's self-destructive and ill-informed. You have to understand what really constitutes a nation, physically and spiritually. When we understand that, then we can come together as a collective because we're bound by the same spirit or spirits, the divinities that govern that nation, that naturally formed entity. So this is what we deal with Ojidama and Afashe, our nationism conference. We had in June. We wrote a book and passed that book out for free. You can also order that book online and download the free ebook version. But when we talk about AMANSEM, affairs of the nation, we're talking about affairs of Ojidama, issues that are taking place within Ojidama, the purified nation, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere, and the best way to approach the various issues that confront us from an ancestrally religious value perspective. We have to have a holistic approach to solving all of our issues. We can approach a life like the whites and their offspring with their truncated view of the world, distorted view of the world, coming up with foolish ideas, foolish values about certain issues or events, and then making foolish decisions based on our lack of understanding the nature of the event or the issue. So we must approach all issues from a nationalist perspective, not a nationalist perspective, but a nationalist perspective. Nationism, Amanie. So this is what we're dealing with. The issue we're talking about tonight, Black Hacktivists, Halfrocentric and Halfrican-centered agenda exposed. We're talking about Black Cultural Hacks or Hacktivists, hacktivism. We're not talking about cyber hacktivism. There's nothing wrong with cyber hacktivism. That's cyber warfare. We need to have Black cyber hacktivists. That's a weapon of warfare, just like we have metal armaments that you fashion to wage war against the enemy. We have chemical and biological warfare. The precedent for that was established in the hoodoo tradition and voodoo and juju in North America, where we poisoned the whites and their offspring by going into the forest, grabbing the herbs, roots, and so forth, mixing them in a certain capacity and then poisoning our enemies to kill them and eradicate them so we can free ourselves from enslavement. That whole notion of chemical and biological warfare being waged, that's part of our religion, culture, that's who we are. So that's a method of waging war. Metal armament, not only stealing or taking metal armaments, weapons from the whites and their offspring in their fort, but also us fashioning our own metal armament to wage war. That's another approach. That's another component. But then cyber warfare is also another component that our people need to be engaged in here in the West as well as all around the world. Cyber warfare, waging war against water filtration plants, electrical grids, all kinds of things, even people's pacemakers, whatever it is, the internet, accessing, people's databases and so forth, scrambling information, destroying information, whatever it is, gathering intelligence. Cyber warfare is key. The whites and their offspring are waging that on a regular basis. When we talk about hacktivism or hacktivists here, we're not talking about cyber warfare because that's necessary. We're talking about Black cultural hactivists or hacktivism. They're not activists, they're hacktivists. They hack into ancestral culture, corrupt it, they're misinformed with regards to it. Then they take on the mantle of African-centeredness or Afrocentrism or Black empowerment or empowerment of the community and so forth. They have a pseudo-philosophy, pseudo-activists who hack into ancestral culture, attempting to reframe it in the eurocentric idea. The Black Cultural Hactivists then seek to promote themselves, as we say, and their pseudo-philosophy as the standard bearer of the Afrocentric or African-centered Black empowerment or Black quote-unquote progressive movement. In reality, their pseudo-philosophy is rooted in self-hatred born of white worship. They just manifest not Afrocentrism or African-centered ideals, they're Halfrocentric. Halfrocentric. They're not barely halfway there. Halfrican-centered ideas and hacktivists. Our ancestral culture is animated by ancestral religion. If you have no facility with ancestral religion, you have no experiential knowledge of that which is Afrocentric, African-centered, empowering for Black people, etc. So we want to provide those proper definitions, clarification of concepts, and more. In our publications, Kemet, Hinat, Ntoro, the Black Nation and Divinity, we properly define the term Kemet and show exactly where it comes from cosmologically and linguistically, which until we published that, no white or Black scholar had published that information. The term Ntoro, often misnomered Neter, meaning divinity, deity. We show the actual linguistic origin of that and the cosmological foundation for that. Once again, no Black nor white scholar had that proper definition and understanding of those concepts until we published that information. We also show that the term Ntoro, so-called Neter, is used every single day in the Atan language, just as the term Kemet is as well. So that particular book, we're going to deal with information from that, as well as our Ojiraman Afashe book, as well as Madanechi, Divine Law, Love, and Divine Hate. So first we want to, when you look at the information and the image for the show, for the promotional for the show, when you look at that imagery, you see it's a medut, it's a determinative medut, it's a determinative hieroglyph, and you see it's a male, and he has an axe, and he's actually driving the axe through the middle of his forehead. So that represents two and references two specific concepts. Of course, someone driving an axe through the middle of their forehead, that's death. They're dying. They're killing themselves. It's self-destructive. It's disorder. So when they're driving the axe through the middle of the forehead, that determinative symbol is representing something that's dead, but also something self-destructive, even criminal, and so forth. Disorders, and so forth. You'll find that the term in ancient Kemet, Mut, also means that which is destructive. It can mean a physical death, but it can also mean spiritual death, spiritual disorder. So you have the term moot. And if you look in the, for example, if you look in the hieroglyphic dictionary, then we can compare with the Akan language and find the same term. Look in the hieroglyphic dictionary for the term moot with that specific determinative, death, dead person, dead thing, the dead. So you're talking about a deceased individual, someone who died. But it also means the damned, those who are spiritually discordant, who are out of harmony with order. So even after they made their transition, those who are driving the action beforehand as spirits, that means these were self-destructive entities. These are the individuals who, when they made their transition and the spirit separated from the body, they were not accepted into the ancestral community. So therefore, these spirits are disordered, the moot spirits, so-called the damned, meaning spiritually disordered, discordant, transient. These are those earthbound spirits who are hanging around, causing problems for people and so forth, quote-unquote, haunting different areas, the places where they died, the houses where they died, the streets upon which they died, and so forth, causing people problems physically, stress and anxiety, putting pressure on them, projecting negative energy towards them, and so forth. We also have individuals who are criminals, child molesters, projecting perverse images and desires and pornographic type thoughts and so forth. These are criminal deceased. Some who are criminal, some who are just ignorant and self-destructive. When they were alive, they were just ignorant people, self-destructive, controlled by lust and vice, and made their transition. And you also have people who are criminals when they were alive, and they made their transition, they're still criminals. So you have people, the term moot in and of itself, meaning dead, including a dead body, but then moot also meaning the spiritually dead, meaning the damned, meaning those who are spiritually disordered, out of harmony with order, quote-unquote, evil, self-destructive, immoral, all these different things. So those two major definitions of the term moot, physically dead in the sense, but also spiritually dead, immoral, out of harmony with order, distorted, discordant, and so forth. We can verify that in the Akan language, because if you look in the Akan language, the term moot means dead body, corpse. But then the second meaning of moot also means bad, evil, immoral, spiritually discordant. So the same term with the two different meanings in Akan is the exact same term with the two different meanings in ancient Kemet and Kani. We utilize that symbol that references that moot, the person driving the axe through the forehead, for a couple of reasons. We also have the variation, not only moot, meaning dead, and also the damned and so forth, the spiritually dead and physically dead. But you have mer, M-R, meaning dead physically, but also dead spiritually. It means that in ancient Kemet. It means that in the Akan language. And of course, we wrote the book Murd or Mord, means dead. The origin of the term Mor, we proved in the book irrefutably that the term Mor means dead, physically dead and spiritually dead. So any fool referring to themselves as Mord, you're calling yourself physically dead and spiritually mutable reality, linguistically and cosmologically, period. And this is why the whites now springs forth that stupidity and that foolish doctrine on our people, and some of our ignorant people embraced that nonsense over 100 years ago and have been perpetuating that stupidity for a while now, even though most of our people have no knowledge of what they're engaged in. But when we put that information out, we purified the understanding of that concept, and anybody can verify that information. No matter what anybody says, it's an irrefutable reality that cannot be challenged or debated. Now, we utilize that symbol of that moot symbol, with that axe being driven through the forehead to show someone who is self-destructive, physically dead, but also spiritually dead. They're using an axe, a hatchet, to hack into their forehead. That's a representation of a cultural hacktivist or a hack. Someone trying to hack into ancestral culture, corrupt it, reframe it, into a eurocentric ideal, and once they've reframed it because they're full of self-hatred, try to reframe African culture, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit culture into a eurocentric ideal, then they embrace that eurocentrized culture, that black culture, or eurocentric culture, white culture, and blackface, and then they try to make themselves the standard bearers of Afrocentrism, African-centeredness, black empowerment, and everything, whatever title you want to have. The whites and their offspring put these kind of Negroes forward. They make them popular. They'll make them popular in the media. Sometimes they will pretend to attack such individuals so that we will develop some sympathy because it appears the media is attacking them, and then we say, well, if the media is attacking them to a certain extent, then they must be scared of this individual. They must be telling the truth, and that further binds us to the ignorance of such individuals. So they're not really Afrocentric or African-centered. They're Halfrocentric and Halfrican-centered because they're not rooted in the culture. When we embrace our ancestral culture fully, it is animated by ancestral religion. That is a reality. So if that is not part of the equation or the foundation, the common denominator, ancestral religion, then you have no knowledge whatsoever of African culture, ancestral culture at all. And therefore you have no knowledge of Afrocentrism, African-centeredness, and so forth. So we're going to give that, first we're going to give a definition. When we talk about people speaking of Africanness, Africanity, but they don't know the origin of the term Africa, they've been taught and they misinform people that it comes from pseudo-Africanus, or it comes from Arabs, or it comes from the Greeks, Romans, Hindus, and so forth. 100% inaccurate. Because of their ignorance, they've learned from the whites and their offspring that foolishness, and deep down inside, because they worship the whites and their offspring, because deep down inside they fear the whites and their offspring, and they hate themselves, they don't want to use the term Africa because white people told them not to use it and make them recoil against it. And you have fools who don't want to use the term black because white people have misdefined the term. And the term doesn't come from white languages either. It comes from our ancestral language. So, when you understand the origin of the term Africa, we published our book, Afuraitkaitnit, the origin of the term Africa, showing that the Ka, the land of Afura, is the land of the Creator, and the Kayet, the land of Afuraiet, is the land of the Creatress. The male and female aspects of the name Afuraka, Afuraikai, Afuraka was corrupted into Africa by the whites and their offspring. Every time we say Afuraka, we are invoking the deity Ra. We're also stimulating the Ra force within our body through ritual incantation. The most ancient name for the creator of the universe is Ra. The most ancient name for the creatress of the universe is Ra or Ra'et. And of course, Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creatress, are grandchildren of Amen and Amenet, or Nyame, Nyamewa, the supreme being. The supreme being directs the creator and creatress to create the world. Of course, we've done broadcasts on that and written books dealing with that. So when you invoke Ra through Afura and Ra'et through Afuraet, you're invoking the creator and creatress. Afu means flesh, or house or place of residence. Your flesh is the house or place of residence of the spirit of the creator, or the spirit of the creatress, if you're Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, African black people only. So when we say Afura, that is the title of Ra. When we say Afuraet, that's the title of Ra'et. Every time we say that, we're invoking them by name. And we're aligning our Ba, or our Ba'et, our spirit, with the creator and creatress, because our spirit is a little portion of that energy that they dispense to us. When we say Ka, or Ka'et, we're invoking the divinity, not only in the head region, the soul, the divine consciousness, the Ka or Ka'et, but also the great Ka and Ka'et, that the male and female force of nature that governs the black substance of space, which contains all planets, suns, moons, stars, everything in creation. So when we invoke these deities by saying Afuraka, Afuraitkaitnit, we're invoking the divinities that govern the spirit and also govern the soul every time we say the name. So in our book, we prove that linguistically, etymologically, we show it in the Medutu proving for the first time that the name Afuraitkaitnit can be found in the hieroglyphs of ancient Kemet, which no other scholar, black or white, has ever shown until we release that information. So when people are saying they're African-centered, but they don't know the origin of the term Africa, they don't know the male and female expressions of the term, but they're calling themselves African-centered and using the male term, yet not even understanding the male term and don't even know the female term exists, then they're Halfrocentric, promoting the false idea that African or Africa comes from Europeans. That's Halfrocentrism, and then perpetuating that misinformation that was seeded in us by the Europeans to promote self-hate. And our people are still promoting that. But yet they're calling themselves standard bearers, and the whites and offspring understand that, but they promote these individuals through the media, through the internet, and so forth. We have individuals talking about Amen and Amen-Ra, yet never invoke nor mention Amenet, the great mother, also called Amenet-Raet. And of course, Amenet and Raet are two different divinities. Amen and Ra are two different divinities. But you have the great father Amen, sometimes called Amen-Ra. You have the great mother Amenet, sometimes called Amenet-Raet. The male and female forces that comprise the supreme being. We communicate directly with them. These are not just concepts or abstract ideas. Your mother and father are not just abstract ideas. You can communicate directly with them. Amen and Amenet are the great father and the great mother. We can communicate directly with them through the agency of our Ka. Our Kayat, our soul, our divine consciousness, the deity dwelling in the head region. They speak directly to us. They show themselves to us. They guide us. If you're not engaged in ancestral religion, you assume, because the whites and offspring told you, that Amen and Amenet just represent the hidden or that which is, concealed, and it's an abstract principle. That's when you know a Negro is worshiping the whites and their offspring. They're into nonsensical ideals such as secular nationalism or atheism, some foolishness like that. Very often, even when they don't understand the construct, don't know anything about Amenet or Amenet-Raet, or just have heard of the name, they still only focus on Amen, Amen-Ra, and still don't understand who he is. Again, that's only half of the equation. Halfrocentrism, African-centered. You have people pontificating about Ma'at, writing whole books and articles and doing presentations about Ma'at and who Ma'at is and what Ma'at is. We're talking about it's just a principle, and the principle was represented by a female because the female was the original and all this other nonsense. Number one, Ma'at is not the great mother. Amenet is the great mother. Ma'at is a great granddaughter of the great mother. So she's not the original female. The original female divinity is Amenet. And Amen is the original male. And there was never a time that there was just Amenet. Just like there was never a time when there was just Amen. They have always been. Ma'at is a great granddaughter of Amenet. And Ma'at's twin brother complement is the male divinity Ma'at. And his place in creation is equal to that and balances out that of Ma'at. You can't have creation without the male divinity Ma'at and the female divinity Ma'at working together. We did a broadcast on Ma'at and Ma'at and who they are and how they manifest in our Khan culture, the Yoruba tradition, in Vodun, as well as ancient Kemet. If you're talking about Ma'at, because the whites and their offspring talk about Ma'at, but you've never heard of or know nothing about the divinity Ma'at because you have never invoked him or communicated with him, just as you've never communicated with Ma'at and don't know who she is, you're just repeating nonsense like the whites and their offspring, talking about she's just a representative of a principle or a law, but she's not actually a deity. That's pure foolishness. That's not Afrocentrism. That's not African-centered. That's, at best, Halfrocentrism. But then promoting yourself as a teacher or an elder or a baba or mama or whatever, priest, PhD, whatever it is, doesn't matter. It means all those little titles mean absolutely nothing. Doesn't matter where people have traveled. Doesn't matter how many years they've been involved in study. All of that is absolutely meaningless. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. So until someone can talk about these divinities through their direct experience with them, then they have no knowledge or no standing to speak on them or teach about them at all. No titles mean anything. People talk about divine love being the strongest force in creation, which is nonsense. Divine love and law is the same word. Love or law is the expansive pole of order. Divine hate is the contracted pole of order. Divine love is comprised of ma'ah and ma'at. They are the male and female forces of divine law or love. In law with an individual, that's when you're in love with an individual, because love and law is the same word in our language. You're in quote-unquote love, that means you're in law. That means your interaction with that individual or entity is reflective of divine order. Every moment of every day, that's a lawful or loveful relationship. That's the expansive pole of order. Through law, it's an instrument that allows you to attract balance to your life and you adhere to law. If you're imbalanced and you're seeking to rebalance yourself, then you adhere to law, the laws that govern your diet or laws that govern your interaction in creation. Once you adhere to law, that's the instrument that allows you to attract balance to your life. That's why love is the instrument that allows you to attract your balance or your complement to your life. Law and love is the same word. To be in law is to be in love with an individual or entity, functioning in harmony with divine order in every interaction. That's the expansive pole of order. Hate is the contractive pole of order. Through divine hate, we impress order upon creation. You impress or imprint the parameters within which things must operate. Imprint the order, stamp the order on all individuals and entities in creation. If they step outside of that prescribed order, then there's a set aside for destruction. So your immune system imprints upon the cells in the body the order within which they must operate. And if they do not operate within those parameters, the immune and lymphatic systems kill them to maintain the integrity of the body. So we're talking about Harubat and Setchimar, Benna and Abena, the male and female forces of divine hate, the contracted pole of order. Iyami Abeni and Ogun in Yoruba tradition and so forth. Ogun and Ananu in Vodun. So we're talking about these male and female forces of divine law, quote-unquote love, and divine hate. These are the expansive and contracted poles of divine order. So if you don't understand the divine order is comprised of law and hate, then you don't understand divine order. So anybody running around talking about divine order and ma'at and so forth and have no knowledge of these concepts because they're just aping what the whites and their offspring have said and simply blackening it up, then they have no standing within any community to talk about these concepts because they're constantly misinforming people. Because they are misinforming people, the whites and their offspring promote them in various ways. Those who promote the study of African cosmology yet have no facility with the invocation of actual Aboson, Orisha, Vodou, Arusu divinities who animate the cosmology itself, as well as animate us, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, every moment of every day. If you don't understand that cosmology is animated by the forces in nature who impact us, possess us, communicate with us, they're not just principles, abstract principles within ourselves that we must study and learn about. And once we study and learn about nature and just observe nature experientially, then we can learn about the abstract principles of the deities. That's pure stupidity. The little professors and PhDs and Negroes who believe that they have some credentials because they've had some little bogus initiation on the continent, that means absolutely nothing at all. It's not respected at all. If you have no facility with the Aboson, the divinities of your blood circle, who are born into the world with you and communicate directly with them, and your ancestral spirits of your direct blood circle, then you have no standing to talk about the culture. Going to the continent to spend thousands of dollars or having someone come over here and take thousands of dollars to give you a quote-unquote initiation, they can't initiate you into your blood circle. You were born into your blood circle. They can't give you a divinity. You were born with a divinity that was assigned to you by the Supreme Being. Nobody from the continent can come over here and teach us hoodoo or voodoo or juju and so forth. That's something we maintained here for hundreds of years in our blood circle until we reestablish our own ancestral religious practice that we brought from the continent hundreds of years ago and fashioned a unique expression based on our relationship with this region of our Saseapur, the Earth Mother, and develop that locative identity based on us living in this region of our Saseapur, the Earth Mother, consuming the plant life and mineral life and so forth from this region, taking it into our bodies, blending blood circles, our Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit blood circles here. Those interactions create a locative identity and the expression of the Abosom and Orisha, Vodun, and so forth here in the Western Hemisphere in this region of the Earth Mother is unique. And when we take those expressions on, we have a locative identity and a culture, ancestral religious expression rooted in our experience here that no one from the continent or outside of our blood circle can teach us. Only people within our blood circle can teach that. So any fool running around talking about they have a credential to talk about ancestral religion because they went outside of their blood circle to get a credential, meaningless. They don't have any standing. That's not respected at all. So when people are talking about these different things and misinforming our people on a regular basis, and then they're put forward or put themselves forward as standard bearers of the culture, hacking into the culture, and you have Negroes who are integrationists trying to take on the mantle of African culture or trying to strip African culture away from Afurakani people who are really grounded in the culture, trying to dissuade our people away from true culturally grounded individuals to embrace a Negro who's pretending to be dipping and dabbing in culture to follow a Negro. You have people calling individuals Hotep people, for example. Any Negro who uses the term Hotep in a derogatory fashion is, on one hand, ignorant or an agent. Either way, what they're engaged in is stupidity. Hotep is a sacred term. The vibrations that comprise that term, as well as all the terms in ancestral languages, because we have tonal languages and the different tones shift meaning. The Hotep is talking about a ritual process, a purification process. It's also the name of a male divinity and a female divinity. So if you hear somebody saying Hotep nigger or Hotepper, corrupting the name of a deity that functions in creation, a male divinity as well as a female divinity. So you have stupid individuals misusing that term. When they use those terms in that fashion, they are identifying themselves as Halfrocentric Hacktivists. They're not people to be listened to or embraced on any level. These are fools, idiots. They have no knowledge whatsoever. They have no respect for themselves. They hate their own culture. We have Negroes running around with English names and Arab names and Hindu names and so forth, invoking the deceased relatives of the whites and their offspring every time the English or Arab or Hindu or Asian name is spoken. And they're attaching themselves and binding themselves to that corrupt set of vibrations every time they speak that collection of vibrations and identify themselves with it. They ingest that collection of vibrations. When someone speaks your name, you ingest that collection of vibrations. It stimulates your eardrum. It triggers certain memories and ideas within you, and you operate on those sound vibrations because they've been inculcated within you. If you have a collection of sound vibrations that are discordant because they are Arabic or English or Hindu or Asian or pseudo-Native American, you're ingesting a collection of vibrations which is a discordant collection of energy, units of energy. It's like someone can scratch a board and that sound, those sound vibrations are disconcerting to someone. It creates a discordant energy within the person. It can give someone chill. Or when someone is playing music or blasting something and it's very discordant, those sound vibrations create discordance within a person. Just as sound vibrations, you can sing to a certain pitch and the sound vibrations themselves can break a glass. The sound vibrations can break a hard substance like glass. What are the sound vibrations doing to your organs, your cells, your glands, and so forth? Our names as well as our language is rooted in collections of sound vibrations we learn directly from the deities when they possess, when they move, when they speak, when they function in creation. That harmonious emanation of sound vibrations, specific grouping, we learn them, listen to them, ingested them, and then we replicate them whenever we speak. When we have names, we attune to the energy that's emanating from us, that unique configuration of energy that makes up our spirit, our spiritual constitution, constantly emanating vibration. Your spirit circulating through your body, your energy circulating through your body is constantly emanating sound vibrations from your vehicle, your physical vessel. It's like you blowing air into a trumpet. The air moving through that specific configuration of brass produces a certain sound. When air is blown through a tuba, it's a different configuration of brass. It creates a different sound. If it's blown through a trombone, the same air from the same lungs, but it's a different configuration of brass, so it generates a different set of sound vibrations. When life force energy is circulating through your body, because no one is exactly structured like you, the collection of sound vibrations emanating from you, and that circulation is happening consistently as long as you're breathing and functioning. It's a unique collection of sound vibrations that is actually emanating or enunciating your name consistently and perpetually. When you replicate that collection of sound vibrations, you're speaking your actual name. When you speak a collection of discordant sound vibrations like Arabic titles or English titles or Asian titles, Hindu titles, pseudo-Native American titles, these discordant sound vibrations that have nothing to do with the construction of your spirit, you're ingesting these units of energy and trying to work with them. It's like swallowing poison as opposed to natural fruits and vegetables. You're swallowing something that's discordant. It triggers discordance within your spirit, your mind, your spirit, your adwini. And this is why, of course, such individuals continue to perpetuate misinformation. That's foolish. They'll get one thing right and 10 things wrong, which is creating chaos and discordance because they're continuously identifying themselves with the disc on a regular basis. You have individuals like that running around calling themselves African-centered. You can't be an unapologetic African and you're named after a European or an Arab. That's ridiculous. But when people start slacking and talking about, well, we don't have to do this and we don't have to do that and we don't have to be moral, we don't have to follow any kind of rules and so forth to be African-centered or Afrocentric. I got out of Christianity because I didn't want to follow rules. We don't have anything dealing with morality and good and evil are two parts of a continuum, and there's no such thing as absolute good and evil, as pure stupidity, mimicking the whites and their offspring. When you talk about order, the expression of order is ma'ah and ma'at. They place conditions on creation. That's the nature of law. It's a set of conditions woven into creation, wired into creation. It's the expression of order. Creation is established in a specific manner. If we talk about order, that means certain things are acceptable, certain things that are not. There are people who are self-destructive. They are lustful. Some are lustful and malicious. Some are just lustful. They have misguided desires, and they seek as cultural hacktivists, trying to hack into ancestral culture, cut out what they don't want based on their lust, their programmed lust, and then corrupt what is left over to fit their lust or their malice, and then put that forward as culture. These are not Afrocentric or African-centered individuals. They are Halfrocentric and Halfrocentric, African-centered, hacktivists. They're like that Medusa, that hieroglyph. They're hacking themselves in the middle of their head. They're splitting their consciousness. They can't tell the difference between what is real and what is not because they're not involved in a cultural process or a ritual process to align themselves with order on a consistent basis so they can purge out disorder and embrace reality, embrace order. That's what's taking place. That not only happens within the pseudo-cultural or pseudo-conscious community, a group of Black activists who establish themselves as pseudo-leaders and so forth, but that takes place within the larger community. If you look at what's been taking place with us for the past 100+ years, it was through ancestral religion. Afurakani, ancestral religion, Kudu, Juju, Vodun, and so forth, that we were empowered to wage war against the whites and offspring and force the end of enslavement in the Western Hemisphere. We know about Haiti, we know about the Maroons in Jamaica, the Maroons in Suriname and South America, but also the Gullah War that forced the Civil War, that forced the end of enslavement. Our people waging war against the whites and offspring and massacring them. Kumpo Yao Nat Turner. Kumpo Kwabena, Timarvis, Nana Abena Aramita, Harriet Sub, Gabriel Prophet, these various different people waging war against the whites and their offspring to massacre them, forcing them into the position where they had to abolition, had to accept repatriation initiatives, had to accept emancipation because they knew if they did not, we would continue to massacre and wipe out every cracker in the country. We forced them into that position. They had to move towards emancipation. They had to move towards reconstruction. They had no other choice. They were either going to be massacred or give. So they had to give in. They were forced into that position begrudgingly. Our people who are animated by ancestral religion forced that militarily through physical armaments as well as chemical and biological warfare. They did their job while they were alive. They got us out of physical enslavement, the ones who embraced ancestral religion. Then they began an independent Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit town movement, establishing independent towns all over the country. The whites and their offspring will only want you to focus on towns like Rosewood and Wall Street, who ended up being unsuccessful because the whites and their offspring destroyed the towns and the people. The people had many different businesses, but they also had church. People were thinking that if they just stayed away from the whites and their offspring, then everything will be all right. Going to church and believing the fake Jesus and everything else. They want us to focus on those towns so that they can say, well, they tried that, but then the whites came to destroy it and there was nothing they could do. There were hundreds of black towns that were established, and many of them defended themselves and killed crackers, and they were not burned to the ground. So they lived intergenerationally free and independent. That's the legacy we need to focus on, the ones who actually engaged the Amaniye process, the nationism process, rooted in our ancestral religious values. It was the ancestral religion that animated revolution and resolution and freed us from physical enslavement. The next step was establishing independent town settlements, securing our sovereignty, arming ourselves to kill our enemies if they sought to overrun such towns. And we lived intergenerationally. The whites and their offspring response to that was reconstruction, trying to lure our people away from that kind of independence and saying, well, you can participate in government. You can be congressmen, you can be senators, you can be lieutenant governors and so forth. You can start having your own businesses and so forth, and luring our people away from that. And some of our people were saying, well, we don't have to be in the independent black towns. We can participate in the electoral process in America. They started leading us away from that. And our people started trying to get involved in church, and they started moving to expand Christianity wherever they could, because they knew that would make people docile slaves mentally if they embraced that nonsense. And it took us decades to really jump on the Christianity thing. It didn't happen right away. Most of our people rejected it up front. And some of our people embraced it, but then at the same time, they were still practicing their own traditions as well when things really went wrong. So some of our people got lured into that Reconstruction nonsense. Then decades later, those who have become lured and embracing the nonsense of Christianity and lured away from independence, even though you're establishing an independent black town, there may have been struggles to a certain extent at certain times during the winter or whatever. Some people didn't want to struggle like that and continued to build. Some did, and they were successful. Other ones, when there was too much struggle, they couldn't see beyond the struggle. They got lured back into the white society and so forth. But then the end of Reconstruction comes and the whites re-emerge through the Ku Klux Klan and everything else, and Jim Crow, and start reestablishing these oppressive codes. And the black people who had embraced trying to become part of America, now they're living up under that. But then they're also Christians at the same time. So they're believing, well, it doesn't matter what the whites do here on earth, because we're going to get our reward in heaven, and they're going to be burning in hell, and we'll just suffer now because suffering is noble and suffering is spiritual, and once we go through suffering, we're going to live in eternity with the fictional white Jesus and so forth. So they fell into that. But then you had other individuals who maintained the black town up into the 50s, 60s, 70s, until the whites and offspring began to flood the communities with drugs and so forth on a higher level. Some of those towns, remnants of them still exist. Some of those towns never died out. We have some towns such as North Brentwood in Maryland, been around for nearly 100 years and it still exists. Right outside of D.C., walking distance from D.C. You have Mound Bayou, Mississippi, and other towns. Now, they have been co-opted with Christianity and things like that, but they still have a structure that can be built upon when people awaken themselves and purify themselves. So we have a different track. We have the integrationists who've been in charge, basically leading the mainstream of black people in America for the past 100 years. They've been absolutely unsuccessful. We're no closer to liberation, freedom, sovereignty on our own territory, self-governing, self-ruling, and securing our sovereignty. We're no closer to that today than we were 10 years after the Civil War. So the integrationists have done everything that they've wanted to do. They have been in charge with the mainstream with regard to the direction our people will be going in this country, and they have failed miserably. We're still being gunned down in the street on a daily basis. Every 28 hours, a black male is killed by a police officer. Black females being killed, murdered as well. 98% of black people were working for crackers during enslavement. Less than 2% were quote-unquote free people of color and so forth. Today, 98% of black people are working for crackers. So when you have 98% of your people still working for crackers and were being killed every day, hundreds of years ago, 98% of our people were working for crackers and were being lynched and killed whenever they felt like it, if they felt like we weren't doing what they wanted us to do. Nothing has really changed. Under the integrationist philosophy given to us by the whites and their offspring, nothing has transformed in reality. At the same time, you have Pan-Africanists, Messianic nationalists, secular nationalists who are following the philosophies of whites, sometimes putting a black veneer over that white pseudo-philosophy, Messianic nationalism. They're dealing with Christianity, Islam, Judaism, the Moorishism nonsense, and so forth, trying to blacken up the stupidity of white fake religion with fictional cartoon characters, Muhammad, Allah, Yahweh, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Jesus, Esau, Yeshua, and so forth, characters who never existed, black or white. They're trying to fuse that monotheism into one God, one aim, one destiny. We're trying to fuse that monotheism into a messianic nationalism where the one man is going to lead us to the promised land and so forth. We have people engaged in messianic nationalism for the past 100 years, a secular Pan-Africanism or a secular nationalism and so forth that has failed as well. That's been around for 100 years. We are no closer to liberation today than we were 100 years ago. It has not led to any result of liberation. Some people don't want to face that reality. They want to continue to promote the same failed plan. They say, well, if we just do what Brother Malcolm said, well, Brother Malcolm was brainwashed with the Nation of Islam for a number of years, and then he was assassinated before he got a chance to fully awaken and free himself from that nonsense. His parents were Garveyites. Garvey was a very young man when he became very popular. He was still brainwashed with Christianity. Blackening up Christianity does not help. He wasn't rooted in his culture. He didn't have a chance to get to that point before all the things jumped off. He was doing the best he could, but he was a young man trying to figure things out. He didn't have the precedent of a previous 100 years of people trying to have a nationalist movement to see what mistakes they made. He was trying to do what he did, but he was not successful at doing that. The structure or the paradigm was doomed from the beginning because we embraced white culture from the beginning. Messianic nationalism comes from white culture, fake white religion, monotheism, Moses leading the people, Jesus leading the people to the promised land of the paradise, and Muhammad and all this other nonsense that has no basis in reality. So structuring an entire movement around Messianic nationalism, whether it's Pan-Africanism or some other form of secular or monotheistic nationalism or pseudo-religious nationalism rooted in white culture, is doomed from the beginning. It was fashioned by the whites and their offspring. There's no basis in order. People don't know how to function within such a structure because they don't know who they are. When you embrace ancestral religion, you understand that the forces of nature govern all of creation. We are children of these different forces in nature, so therefore we have a place in creation. When we align with the force of nature that governs us, then we know what our function is in creation. We know what our function is within the communal body. Just like every cell in your body is a child of a different organ or gland or organ system. Because they know who they are instinctively, they know what their contribution is to that organ or gland that's their parent, their immediate parent, and therefore they know what their contribution is to the whole body. And they function interdependently and harmoniously, and they can contribute to the whole entity. When you engage yourself in ancestral religion, that's what takes place. You know what Aboso Marisha divinity governs you. You function in that capacity. You purify yourself when necessary. You move forward and function interdependently with other people who understand they are cells within the great divine body. If people don't have that understanding, they just think they're a mass of people and there's one man who's going to lead everybody because he heard from the great God. That's doomed from the beginning. It's going to degenerate and disintegrate into self-destructive, emotionally unstable arguments and everything else. Because it's not rooted or founded in anything sound. It's not founded in Ma'ah and Ma'at, the expression of order. So this is why the whites and offspring promoted integration, but also promoted messianic nationalism and later atheism under the guise of secular nationalism and so forth. So you think you're going to embrace atheism, which is a belief system. It's not reality, it's a belief, a false belief that there is no supreme being, that there are no forces in nature and so forth. So you're going to neglect reality to embrace a foolish philosophy and try to build a structure, a culture, and an approach to nationalism based on a foolish philosophy. It has proven to be ill-effective, failed miserably. We don't have to pretend and wonder. We have precedent. We are here. We are no closer to liberation than we were 100 years ago. Everyone who has been doing whatever they've been doing has failed miserably. The only people who are successful are those who practice ancestral religion and were empowered by that kind of ordered thinking to free us from enslavement and then establish something independent. So we need to go back to those people who did something intelligent and have a track record following the false philosophies that were forced upon us by the whites and offspring that we tried to blacken up and that we've been running with for the past 100 plus years. So you have the Hacktivists, the Halfrocentric Halfrican-centered, not African-centered, but halfway in, Halfrican-centered, Halfrocentric pseudo-culture bearers trying to reintroduce sales philosophies in every generation. People rise up, young people come of age, going from teenage years into their 20s. They want to do something because they see everything criminal. You have the idiots who are integrationists trying to say we need to embrace and love our enemies. You have the people who are a little bit more aware, but they're still steeped in secular nationalism or messianic nationalism, and they reintroduce those self-destructive concepts that are actually eurocentrism and blackface, which most of them do not understand. And they reintroduce that to people. They move with that for 10, 15, 20 years, and then that black nationalist fatigue syndrome sets in because they realize that things are not going very far at all. And they have that black nationalist fatigue syndrome, NFS, nationalist fatigue syndrome, and they start saying, well, I'm becoming more pragmatic now, and now I understand that we don't need to be involved in nationalism. We don't need to be separate. And that's when I was younger, and we don't need to focus like that. We're all part of a world community. They start giving up on what they were focused on in the past because they still fear the whites and offspring. They don't see any way out. You even have some people who claim to be revolutionary and so forth. They don't understand the balance between revolution and resolution. So they believe they have to constantly be in the struggle, but they don't know what the resolution is because they have no capacity. They don't understand revolution and resolution are two halves of the divine whole of intelligence. So Huti and Seshat, the male and female forces of wisdom, govern revolution and resolution. When you invoke them, you can return, which is revolution, returning to the source. When the earth moves around the sun and returns to its point of origin, that's a complete revolution. When you return to your origin, your nature, then you extract from that the resources you need so you can affect resolution, the solution to the problem, and resolving the problem. Resolving or solve, to resolve is to vindicate, to unravel, to unloose, to break free from those chains, unravel the knot, and so forth. Vindicate your condition. That's through aligning with the forces in nature that govern wisdom. They're the poles of revolution and resolution. When we invoke them through ritual, we get the right ideas. We get the right ideas and how to implement those ideas, and we can do something that's constructive as opposed to continuing this cycle of being stagnant generation after generation, then falling into a nationalist fatigue syndrome like, well, we have to change our direction maybe we shouldn't be so focused on just black people or nationalism, or maybe we need to unite with other oppressed peoples around the world like Palestinians, all that kind of stupidity, because deep down inside they never eradicated that foolishness from the whites and their offspring, that fear of the whites and their offspring, the belief that the whites and their offspring will always be in control. You have people who claim to be hyper-revolutionaries and so forth, talking about waging war against the whites and their offspring. They have never done so. Year after year after year after year, all they will do is take pictures with God. They'll take pictures with their fists in the air and so forth. But they will never do anything, and the whites and their offspring know for certainty that they will never do anything but take a picture with a gun. That's it. The whites and their offspring will laugh at them. They can dress in fatigues and body armor and everything else. They know they will not move on anything. They're a joke. When you deal with ancestral religion, however, we talked about the brother Ma'al Ka, so-called Micah Xavier Johnson, who was involved in ancestral religion. He was empowered immediately to wage war. So he cut down those 5 cracker cops in Dallas. He went to war immediately. He didn't just chant about it for years and years and years and take pictures with guns on Facebook. He went to war and eradicated the problem. Afsar Setef in Ra. They killed Alton Sterling in Baton Rouge. He went to Baton Rouge and he executed those white cops and injured others. He was involved in ancestral religion. That led to direct action because there's a cosmological foundation for that kind of direct revolutionary and resolutionary action rooted in ancestral religion, hoodoo, juju, and so forth. So he's not going to talk about that for years and years and years and take pictures. He went to work powered by ancestral religion. So you have other individuals who are hyper pseudo-revolutionaries, chanting and screaming and so forth, but they will never do anything. And they have proven that for years. The whites and offspring don't fear integrationists. They don't fear secular nationalists. They do not fear messianic nationalists. They don't fear pseudo-revolutionaries who chant and take pictures year after year after year after year after year. The only people they have ever feared are people who are engaged in ancestral religion born of their blood cells. They fear hoodoo, so they try to demonize it and outlaw it. They fear juju. They fear voodoo. They fear gree-gree because we poisoned and killed them on the plantations and burned the plantations down, and it was because of hoodoo and juju and so forth that we freed ourselves. Because of that we decided we wanted to establish independent black towns, 100%. To stay away from whites and offspring because they are our enemies. We established the independent Great Dismal Swamp where thousands of black people were living intergenerationally during enslavement. They had freed themselves, set up an army. The whites and offspring tried to go into Virginia, North Carolina, trying to send troops to drag the people out of the Dismal Swamp. They were met with a formidable army. They were forced into a peace treaties and so forth. In the 1700s, our people were living intergenerations, growing food, raising children, to the point where generations later you have children growing up in the Dismal Swamp, in the area of the island in the Dismal Swamp, where they had never seen a white person before in their lives. During slavery, because we established an independent sovereign state right in the midst of the enslavement era. And then other people like Okufo Yao Nat Turner and others waging war against the whites and offspring to force the end of enslavement. That's what the whites and offspring fear. They fear those who are involved in hoodoo, juju, and voodoo because they will engage in chemical and biological warfare to wipe out large numbers of the whites and offspring. They fear those who are involved in hoodoo, voodoo, juju, and so forth because when the Abosom and the Nsamafo inspire and direct someone to stand up and move against the whites and offspring can't step in between that communication. So they will get up, get strapped up, and massacre the police. And there's nothing the whites and their offspring can do to stop that. That's what they fear. They don't fear a pseudo-hyper-revolutionary who yells on Facebook. They don't fear anybody taking pictures with guns. They don't fear secular nationalists or messianic nationalists or intellectual Pan-Africanists who don't have a track record over the past 100 years of affecting anything that they have been talking about. That's reality. So we're talking about the difference between hacktivists, Halfrocentrism, Halfrican-centered, and Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people fully grounded in culture. That's dealing with the people who pretend to know. Then you have, of course, the celebrity hacktivists. The whites and their offspring promote mulattoes like Jesse Williams or Kaepernick and these other people, always tying you back to embracing the whites and their offspring. They always have something to say that's going to tie you back to not hating the whites and their offspring, embracing all people, embracing dissexuality, homosexuality, and so forth. They're always going to put forward individuals to try to put them in front of the culture and make them the standard bearers of what direction our people need to be going in. Of course, we reject that and we eradicate that. We stand on our own and we expose these criminals, the whites and their offspring, as well as these individuals, whether they're the little celebrity mulattoes or the other Negroes, athletes or musicians and so forth. They're always going to put forward. The only thing that they're going to celebrate are those who are supporting dissexuality, homosexuality, integration, interracialism, and so forth. The whites and their offspring always engage that process to put those idiots in front of us as well as those criminals in front of us, trying to make them the representatives of the direction we need to take. And then we have people in the pseudo-cultural community who are so-called integrationists or separatists, but in reality, they're two sides of the same coin. They have not affected any revolutionary result for over a century. If you've been given a century to work your program, and your programs have really been the only programs that have been worked on a mass scale for 100 years, and you produce no result at all, not even close, because the condition that we're in proves that, then we don't need to continue embracing the same sales program. You go back to the culture that actually freed you from enslavement, and the only cultural approach that has the capacity to put an end to police brutality by putting an end to these criminals themselves, their lives, and also putting an end to this domination economically and politically and so forth. The only way they can dominate that aspect is they dominate your mind. They can't dominate your mind if you're embracing your own ancestral religion and you're following your own cry, while your soul, your divine consciousness, following the abosom, the orisha, the vodou that are connected to your blood circle and your ancestresses and ancestors of your blood circle. When you follow that, you don't listen to the thoughts, ideals, concepts that are put forward by the whites and their offspring. Therefore, you don't make decisions based on that. Therefore, you don't make self-destructive decisions. You make nationist decisions. You make decisions about pooling your resources with your own people who are on the same frequency, building your own schools, growing your own food, and so forth. But first and foremost, you deal with defense. You have Negroes talking about if you don't hunt, like so-called the washed-up rapper Killer Mike and so forth, talking about, I know how to hunt. This is a Negro. This is one of these hacktivists who are running around the country as a surrogate for Bernie Sanders. The word surrogate is congruent with the word agent. A surrogate is a spokesperson, a mouthpiece for someone. So if you're a spokesperson or a mouthpiece for someone, you're an agent of someone. Who are you representing? So you have Negroes running around talking that nonsense because they're steeped in the fear of the whites and their offspring that leads to a pseudo-worship rooted in fear. Negroes like that fear the whites and their offspring. They fear them so much that they're like, you should not even think about waging war against them. A Negro like that couldn't stand next to Ma'al-Kar, or Brother Micah. He couldn't stand next to Al-Sar because they had no fear. They weren't bitch niggas. They went out and massacred the cops. This agent is trying to dissuade you from doing anything against the enemy. You have agents in the community, little celebrity agents that are not very popular and then very popular agents in the community. So we're talking about hacks, black hacktivists. There's a difference between a hacktivist, a Halfrocentrist, or a Halfrican-centered individual, and someone who is Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African, black, and understands exactly who they are. So that's the difference. We embrace our own culture. We have a nationist approach. Amaniye, nationalism, the purification of nationalism. This is how we solve our problems. We must identify and expose and eradicate the hacktivist agenda and recognize these hacktivists when they show up, whether they're making documentaries, running around, giving speeches around the country. They don't know who they are. They're not rooted in their culture. You don't follow hacktivists. You don't align yourself with hacktivists or Halfrocentric. You recognize your own culture. You build based upon your own culture. You connect with people who are on the same wavelength, who are on the same pathway, the same frequency. And then you begin to let these hacktivists implode. And then you put some medicine out there to expose their implosion. And of course, we put some medicine out there, and of course, they are imploding in front of people on a regular basis daily. You're starting to see that already. So we're going to go to the chat room real quick for the people who have tuned in a little bit later. We mentioned that this is the last day for this week of our broadcasting week, and we come back on next Monday. But this weekend is our Hoodoo Mind, Hoodoo Nation Festival in Washington, D.C. This Sunday, October 16th, from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. It is a free event open to Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people only. Registration is free and required. You can register on our Facebook notification for Hoodoo Mind, the Hoodoo Nation Festival. Hoodoo is the Akan Ancestral Religion in North America. So we're talking about that tradition. We will have presenters. We will be presenting. AMANSEM will be presenting on root medicine, root work, and her approach to extracting healing elements and properties from plant life and mineral life. Received from her Insamanko and Abosong, the ancestral spirits and divinities of her blood circle. That approach she uses in the Asate Hills to create her medicine. And then Afia Asate Virtual, she'll be presenting Asumine, impregnation of talismans, amulets through mineral life and so forth, and how to utilize that for healing, for protection, and so forth as part of the Akan tradition in North America, the Undu or Hoodoo tradition in North America. We will be presenting on restoring Akan identity within Hoodoo. We'll also have our Egwa marketplace, our vendors. We'll be able to shop all day long, so it's an all-day event, free event. We'll be giving away a free copy of our book, which will be published, Hoodoo Mind, Hoodoo Nation Journal. So we mentioned we have a couple of spaces left as far as vending because we had a couple of cancellations. You can check that out on the Hoodoo Mind page. First come, first serve. We have 2 spaces left, $30 for a table. We provide a 6-foot table and 2 chairs. And for those who would like to place an ad in the journal, today is absolutely the last day because we have to go to print tomorrow. So you must send those JPEG files in immediately if you want to promote your business, organization, or institution in our Hoodoo Mind book, which will be given away for free to everybody who comes. And the book will be placed as a free ebook download on our website, so hundreds of thousands of people will see your ad when you place it in there. A 1/4 page ad is $25, a half-page ad is $35, and a full-page ad is $50, and the full page, all the ads are in color, of course. The book is an 8.5 by 11 size. So those businesses will be in there, and if you want to add a personal ad as well. So, and finally, before we get on the phone line, we had that sale in today as well. We had the entire 23-book set for $100, which includes shipping. If you want to take advantage of that, that's helping us with the travel expenses for presenters and the free book giveaway because we print our own books in-house on our own printers, our own publishing, and so forth. So giving away the free books as we do at every event. We give away a free copy of one of our books to everyone who comes out. We've given away over 1,000 of our books for free to the community all across the country at our events, our presentations. We've never charged for any lecture or presentation wherever we go around the country. It's always free. It's always open to our people only. We always give away a free copy of one of our books. So we'll be doing the same thing at this event and help to cover those expenses. This sale we're doing is helping to raise funds for that to cover these kinds of expenses for the free presentations as well as the books and so forth. So that sale ends today. This is the last day of the broadcasting week. That sale button is on the website, on the publications page of our website, so you can go and hit that. It says special sale, 23 books for $100. We also have off books just in general. They range between $8 and $13, so any order of one of our books will assist us in covering these expenses. So if you support the work we're doing, please support the Hoodoo Nation Festival. You can make a donation on the page, or you can just purchase a book, one or more books. Any donation, you have the option of receiving a book in return for your donation. So, yet I say for those who have made a donation or purchased some books, but yes, that people have asked, that sale ends today, the last day of the broadcasting week. So please take advantage of that. And we'll put the publication page, a link in the website. We're going to go to the phone lines real quick. We're almost out of time. Michelle on the phone line, number 6277. You had a question or a comment?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me? Hello?
Oh, I can hear you now. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yes, heads up. This is Sister Naila. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm okay, and I'm sorry for the noise. I'm actually outside, so hopefully it won't be too bad. But I just wanted to call you, call in and just basically say that I'm so glad that you're doing this work. And the way the broadcast started off, I know that probably, what you were saying about the hacktivism probably put some folks off or maybe confused them. I'm not sure, but if we don't have, like you said, something more than some fist raising and photo posing and marching, then nothing is going to change. And one of the reasons that, the crackers are basically attacking us and assassinating us in the streets is because we're not shooting back or fighting back, and not just with guns and fists, but also from a spiritual warfare side of things. And that's just really, really important. And I love what you said about reiterating about, the necessity of African people in the diaspora finding their way through our spiritual systems without having to always be validated by initiation, by going to the continent and having some oftentimes fake ceremony or ritual done, and then coming back and saying, oh, I'm a priest, I'm a priestess, or I went through this and I went through that. But yet these people are still called Henry David and Rebecca Brown, and they don't know the language. They don't know anything about the tradition. They don't know anything real. And I just wanted to say this one last thing in relationship to that. A couple of weeks ago, a sister that I just met in Arizona who knows, our baby girl, Afivi, and she was telling me that there was this, priest or Babalao who is telling folks that there are, from a Yoruba perspective, that there are 801 Orisha, and only one of them is female. But yet this person is doing readings and doing initiations and doing ebos and work for people, and you're telling folks that there's only 800, there's 801 Orisha, and there were thousands of Orisha. We just don't have access anymore to who and what they were. But to say that there's only one female deity and the other ones that we have now were people or ancestors or ancestresses who were deified to become Orisha, but there were never any divine forces in nature before human beings on earth to be a female deity. And this is somebody who calls themselves a Babalao. I'm sorry. That person is an idiot, and they don't know what they're doing and what they're talking about. And whoever told them that is a super idiot. And
Absolutely.
folks have to stop, folks have to stop this thing. And with initiation, there are a lot of ways to be initiated. And initiation does not ever guarantee priesthood. Initiation is a process. It is a ritual, a complex series of rituals that one can go through, okay, to recalibrate their spiritual path, their spiritual essence, hopefully activate and engage their ori in a higher level, in a more connected level to an ancestral tradition, and hopefully one that is actually of your blood lineage, because a lot of folks who are being initiated into Ifa or Akan traditions or Vodun, your ancestors may not even be of those traditions. And so you're going to marry your spirit to a tradition that isn't even yours and that you might have been at war with. Your ancestors and ancestresses on the continent may have been at war with, or even once through the Ma'afa. Those folks may have sold your people out on a slave ship or on a plantation. So I would really, really wish that folks would stop in their half-African, but also this half-spiritual intelligence about what it is that you think you're doing and getting. I'm sorry, somebody who's initiated and they're 22 years old can't get me to Doba them to save their life. I'm sorry. There's just too many people out here who are being initiated or think that they're being initiated, and most of the time the people initiating them don't have any ashek. So that to me, further elaborates on that half-African sensibility that so many folks are sustaining and perpetuating. So that was my little bent. So I've been, you got me riled up, bro.
No, we appreciate that, because that's key. It's a major overarching theme. If somebody's talking about halfway in and halfway, typically they're talking about being cultural, but they have no facility with ancestral religion. That's the true Halfrocentric, Halfrican-centered, and so forth. And I'm glad you brought that example up, because I'm sure many people
I'm sorry.
come in contact with someone saying that kind of, putting forth this notion that the deities are really just deified ancestors and ancestors, which is inaccurate. Or, like you said, this whole, the Yoruba got infected with Islam for hundreds of years, and some of that has been woven into the Yoruba traditions, just like the Akan. Some of them got infected with Christianity and Islam, and they started reading that nonsense. So this whole notion of one female Orisha and hundreds of males, nonsense. But that's infection. And then we often, when we recognize that instantaneously, if we are proud of the order is telling us that, then they immediately respond with, well, you haven't been in the culture long enough, you can't say that, but yes, we can. So we need to take back our own understanding, our own power, and not be controlled by some idiots just because they show up trying to pretend like they have knowledge of something. So we appreciate that.
Right. And I'm so grateful that sister had the wherewithal to call me and say, Ia, is this right? Or I was told this. And you have to, if you're new to our ancestral traditions, whether it's from a religious perspective or a religious spiritual perspective, or just a cultural one, that's fine too. But at the same time, ask questions. Ask folks who are a little more truly African-centered, wholly African-centered, and nationalistic. Because otherwise, you're not going to get the truth, or you're not going to get things done, or come across things the right way. Again, another thing that was happening with these folks in Arizona is that there was somebody coming from Nigeria And they sent out a flyer saying, we're going to initiate people. If you want to be initiated, if you need readings or work done, or I think it's at EBO or something like that. So basically meaning your prescribed offerings. Well, everybody wants to be initiated, right? Of course, people want to be initiated. Is it in your destiny to be initiated? Will it serve your spiritual path and your essential nature to be initiated? And initiation, again, doesn't guarantee priesthood. You have to work towards that. And everybody who's initiated doesn't get to do work. Sometimes you're initiated to save your life or to, quote, unquote, pay for a family lineage debt. Or to basically just get your own spiritual path in order. But it doesn't mean that you're going to be a priest or priestess and do work for people. It doesn't mean that you're going to be a diviner. It doesn't mean anything other than you just went, just like when you go to college and you graduate and you can't get a job. And you go back and get a master's degree or a doctorate and you still can't get a job. It's the same kind of thing.
Right.
So folks have to ask questions, and I'm open to answering folks' questions, and just sort of, taking the guesswork out, the confusion, or the mistrust, the second guessing, and to clarify. Because once you're spiritually evolved and protected and armed, then you're also armed and ready for any type of battle or warfare, or even in times of peace, to be able to stand strong.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We appreciate that. Try to resonate with people, because I know they have those similar questions, and they keep people showing up and popping up in different ways on the internet and posting, creating groups and stuff like that, and promoting that misinformation. So
all right. Well, thank you. And I'm actually, my bus is here, so I'm just going to put you back. I'm going to mute you and just listen.
Okay.
Okay. All right. All right. Odabo.
Okay. We have one more call on the phone line. Michelle on the phone line, number 5877. You got a question or a comment?
Yes. How you doing, brother?
Good. How you doing?
Good. I got a couple questions for you as regarding the Bible. I've been following your teachings and reading some of your publications, and I still got a good couple questions, because when we go into the Bible, what we find is that I hear you talk about these deities or spirits or whatever, but the Bible makes it clear that, yes, there are good spirits, and they do operate and have certain functions over creation, but they also make it clear that there are evil spirits also. And I've never heard you talk about evil spirits, because one of the things when reading the Bible, it talks about that these evil spirits came down and they were able to possess people, which they call demonic possession. Also, they say that these evil spirits taught the cutting of roots and sorcery and incantations. They also taught astrology, all kind of things to increase the evil and to have mankind at war with each other. So I wanted to know, what was your understanding on that?
Okay, so now first, for example, when we were talking about earlier in the broadcast, when I was talking about certain discarnate ancestral spirits, some who are lived a harmonious life, so when they make their transition, they're accepted by the ancestral community. I was talking about that earlier. But then I said there are some who were engaged in lustful activity. They were like criminals and, criminal individuals and so forth when they were alive, and when they made their transition, they were not accepted in the ancestral community. So it's just like we were talking about last night on the broadcast when we said the difference between a Samain Pa, which is a good ancestral spirit, one of the Nananon Nsimafo, which is a spiritually cultivated ancestral spirit. Then you have Samain Bani, which is an evil discarnate spirit. Bani means evil in Akan. Bani means evil in the language of ancient Kemet. So it's these discarnate spirits who are engaged in disorder, criminality, whether they were rapists, murderers, or child molesters, whatever. Once their spirit separates from the body, they still engage in that same kind of criminality. They're like viral agents within the physical body. They're like viral agents within the spirit body. So they're the ones creating these, this kind of criminality. Now, in our traditions, of course, we know how to neutralize them, just like through medicine, you know how to kill bacteria by taking certain medicine. In our traditions, we know how to deal with that. So, for example, we're talking about one of the presenters in our tradition coming up in the Hoodoo Mayan Festival, talking about Asumayan, and we talk about utilizing talismans and amulets for healing, but also for protection and for defense, for repelling discarnate, disordered spirits who are criminals and self-destructive. So this is the key when you're talking about the Bible. So the information in the Bible is totally inaccurate. It's foolishness. Yahweh is a fictional character. All of the characters in the Bible are fictional characters who never existed of any race or any form. The cosmology promoted in the Bible is totally inaccurate. The reason why they start talking about spirits came down and went into, the wise and all that kind of stuff, their goal was to try to destroy the concept of ancestral religion. Christianity is a fake religion manufactured to try to lure our people away from real religion and embrace the fake religion. So for them to talk about the roots and herbs and astrology and these various different things and misrepresenting that and trying to say that had to do with evil, that's nonsense. That was put in there for political purposes to try to get our people away from practicing real religion, aligning with the actual deities of creation, and following fictional cartoon character deities that are represented by the whites and the offspring. Then some of our people who wouldn't go along with a fake little white deity, they start making little statues of brown deities and saying, well, this is the, representation, so that our people will follow that fictional representation of the fictional deity, but it still represents the false ideals of the whites and offspring. You'll find that in the Bible, you find it in the Quran, you find it in the Talmud, you'll find it in the Dhammapadas in Buddhism and the Bhagavad Gita and so forth. They're always trying to denigrate ancestral religion and try to demonize ancestral religion because they're trying to put forward a fake religion, and they want us to pull away from our own tradition. It's like, for example, if we are eating fresh fruits and vegetables and drinking spring water, the whites and offspring come along and teach us, hey, don't drink, spring water. Start drinking Coca-Cola and Pepsi every day. You don't need water. All you need is liquid. So just drink this Pepsi and Coca-Cola and stop eating fresh fruits and vegetables. Start eating McDonald's and KFC and everything else. And we're becoming obese and getting diabetes and everything else. And then they start demonizing fresh fruits and vegetables. And if somebody says they're going to become a vegetarian or try to, change their lives, they start demonizing them and calling them health and nuts, or you're crazy and everything else. You need to come on and eat like us. So they will demonize what's actually healthy and promote what is destructive as the mainstream. And that's exactly what the Bible, Quran, Talmud, and these other fake traditions books are. And the books were manufactured by taking fragments from texts of ancient Kemet. All the different books of the Bible, they're taking fragments of text from ancient Kemet, corrupting those fragments and recasting them as biblical texts. So the Bible doesn't make anything clear. It's just a book of lies. None of those texts are original at all. When you look at Pertim Heru, so-called Book of the Dead, with the Book of Coming Forth by David, you look at the coffin text in ancient Kemet, pyramid text, and other texts and so forth, all of those little stories you find in the Bible are corruptions of fragments of text from Kemet that they took the vast majority of the information out, and the little less than 1% that was left They took those fragments and corrupted those fragments and put that forward as quote-unquote scripture. So it's not original and it's not accurate. It's full of foolish cosmology deliberately designed to lure our people away from what is real and original and pure and embrace the fake.
So, hello?
Yep.
Okay, so there's been a lot of evidence turning up, you know, even when you do the history and the primary research, that there was a kingdom of Israel that indeed was set up, and that they're finding, you know, stones, even Marna tablets, etc., talks about the reign of Israelite kings. And so, are you saying...
You said what tablet again? I couldn't hear what you said. You said what tablet?
From my understanding, the Marna tablets from, I think from Akhenaten.
Oh, I thought you said something else. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So.
Oh, you're talking about the Tel Armana.
Yeah. Tel Armana tablets, and supposedly they mention and everything. These Israelite kings, as well as the Assyrians, have a stele that mention the Israelite kings and a Israelite king and the event that happened in the Bible, you know. And so, what are you saying, that they took Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, all that stuff, grafted it on and to a later history, or?
Now, what I'm saying is, if you look at our book, Kukutun, the Ancestral Jurisdiction, so when you go to the publications page, that's the first book on the page, we show specifically in detail how Abraham was manufactured, Isaac, Ishmael, Solomon, Sheba, Menelik, Moses, Aaron, Buddha, Brahman, Muhammad, Allah, Yahweh, all of these are fictional characters that didn't exist at all. The Tel Armana tablets do not mention the nation of Israel at all. There's no inscription outside of the Bible that talks about ancient Israel. Even when they try to talk about the Mer Inkata Stele, and they got all excited about the Mer Inkata Stele because they'll call it the Israel Stele because that's the only extra biblical source when it comes from ancient Kemet that mentions Israel in the text itself, but does not mention Israel. So we wrote an article about that, talking about Ur, El, and Jezreel, and we did a broadcast on the article. We published the article. We show the text. We show the hieroglyphs, and we show the actual translation. So it doesn't say Israel either. So when people are talking about there's new evidence that's come out, there is absolutely no evidence at all. When you investigate it, you will see that there was no ancient group of people called Israelites or Hebrews, period. So we go into detail about that and show that in detail in those different broadcasts. And when you look at the Ur, El, and Jezreel article and broadcasts related to the article, where we dissect the article in detail, we look at the Kukutun, the Ancestral Jurisdiction, we go point by point with each one of these fictional characters, showing how they were manufactured, what deities from ancient Kemet they took the titles from and the functions from, and how they manufactured the character for each one of them, including the fictional cartoon character Jesus, as well as Yeshua ben Pandera, all of that. So there's no basis in reality whatsoever.
Okay, so this is my last question. In the Bible, it mentions how a lot of these different tribes and groups dealing with this ancestral religion, that they say in the Bible, you know, after the flood was reestablished by Nimrod of Cush over in the land of Mesopotamia. And it talks about them doing human sacrifices and worshiping these demons and doing all these perverse practices. And I've seen documentaries where actual Africans were participating in these perverse rituals and practices and etc. So, I mean, what's going on with that?
Okay, so number one, the Bible is not a history book. It's a book full of misinformation. So there was no Nimrod. There was no ancient flood that flooded the whole world, and then the world was depopulated except for a little group of people, and then all of that is totally inaccurate. That never happened. So it's not a history book at all. There was no establishment of Cush in Mesopotamia. There was no Nimrod. He did not exist. So again, once again, that's misinformation. When they talk about all the different negative things and start trying to demonize ancestral religion, that's political information. It's a political ploy to try to demonize anything that our people are doing, to try to lure our people into this fake religion so we can follow and be enslaved mentally and spiritually by the whites and their offspring. That's the only reason Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Hebrewism, Taoism, Buddhism, and so forth came into being. They were trying to figure out a way to enslave the minds of their people, of our people, because they were not able to defeat us militarily. They were waging war against our people for thousands of years, and we were stomping them. So they had to start to infiltrate and begin to engage in trade and commerce on the outskirts of society and see different places where people were having, internecine warfare, or there were succession disputes with kings and queen mothers and so forth, and there was disgruntled people in society. They could try to get on the side of one or the other. So they were there for hundreds of years trying to infiltrate the culture. They started trying to look for ways to infiltrate the culture. They recognized after a while if they couldn't do it militarily, they had to figure out a way to corrupt the religion. And that took them hundreds of years. It didn't just happen one day they showed up with a religion, a fake religion, and everybody fell into it. They were there for hundreds of years trying to do this, thousands of years in reality. So when they start putting forth that propaganda, that's all it is. That's like someone coming into the black community, looking at a crackhead or a little community of people who are in an abandoned building and they're smoking crack and they're shaking and self-destructive and sleeping on the ground and everything else. And then someone goes and writes a book and says, the blacks in America, they do drugs and they sleep in abandoned buildings, and that's who they are. And here's the evidence. And they put a camera on them, and then they show them engaged in that process. They don't show that white people created crack specifically to destroy the melanin of black people and flooded the communities with crack and giving out, as well as other drugs and so forth. That's part of the policy, their initiative. You know what I'm saying? And then they put the cameras on the people. That's the kind of thing they're engaged in. They'll go around and find somebody who's engaging in self-destructive activity. So, for example, you have people who are criminals or thieves. In our culture, we don't deal with that. In our culture, if somebody's a criminal or a child molester or something like that, they don't get therapy. They don't, get arrested and go to mental health diversion court and then get assigned a therapist and a community support worker and a case manager and a psychiatrist and get medication management and go to therapy once a week, and that's their probation. We don't do that. We kill them. People, if they're engaged in incest or for rape or murder, we kill them. We execute them. They'll go to a portion where somebody's engaged in criminality, even if it's something ritual, and say that represents the culture. You have priests and priestesses, for example, in Ghana, Abosom Brafo, they have shrines that are called witch-catching shrines. The priests and priestesses, talking about the traditional Abosom Brafo priests and priestesses, they have witch-catching shrines. What is a witch-catching shrine? These are the deities that they use to hunt witches, so-called witches, people engaged in negative, lower-level, quote-unquote, witchcraft. They invoke these deities to go not only physically kill the people, but hunt their spirits down and disintegrate the spirit of the individual, so even after they die, their spirits can't come back to the community and continue to engage in that lower-level discordant activity. So those people engaged in so-called witchcraft are just like the cancer cells that develop within your body. Your immune system seeks them out, isolates them, and kills them every single day. That's why you're still alive. We have people who are cancerous that develop within the body. we always had a mechanism to isolate them, kill them, and expel them from the community. That's why we were able to have civilizations that lasted for thousands of years. The whites and their offspring will go find a little crackhead or find a little criminal and say that is the whole culture. And then they'll put it on blast and put it everywhere. But that's the way they operate. But that's not reality. So we can never trust what the whites and their offspring put forward. What they put forward in the Bible is misinformation. It was not black people who wrote the Bible. It was the whites and their offspring corrupting specific texts from ancient Kemet, corrupting them, and we show what those texts are in the different books and publications, and putting forth that misinformation of the Bible, Quran, and everything else. And it's the same thing when they film and write books and articles. They have an agenda. They're not there to inform the people of reality. They have the same agenda they had 2,000 years ago. They want to demonize Ancestral Religion, and they want to put forward their fake pseudo-tradition. That's the basis of everything that they do. They are spirits of disorder. The whites and offspring are spirits of disorder that incarnate that way. So everything they're engaged in is to subvert what is true, what is accurate, and promote themselves and promote us following and getting up under them. So anything they put forward is always inaccurate, and when you investigate it, it's exposed to being inaccurate.
Okay. Maybe you can clear this up. I was looking at a video online of these Africans, and they was engaged in, they called it phallus worship. And I'm like, that's, I'm from over here. That's completely foreign to me. I'm trying to figure out what's the spirituality behind that.
That's why you have to investigate what people are putting forward. There's no such thing as phallus worship. Now, the whites and their offspring used to engage in that, like the Greeks and everybody else. They would, because, they promote homosexuality and bisexuality and everything else. So for them, that's what they promote. For us, there's no such thing as, it's impossible to have phallus worship. That doesn't exist. That's impossible to fit into cosmology. The only worship that takes place is alignment with the deity, the Supreme Being, the Great Mother and Great Father, and the children of the Supreme Being, which are the divinities. We are both on the original. Now, let me say for the people who are on, we got about 90 seconds left. If you want to listen beyond 11:30, you have to call in on the call-in number 657-383-0635, 657-383-0635. You have about a little bit over a minute left to call in because the show will cut off online, but the people who are on the phone line, you'll still be able to hear. But we're almost done anyway, but it's still just about a minute left. But there's no such thing as phallus worship. Worship is invoking the same spirit that animates the sun, that makes the sun spin around, the earth mother that makes her vibrant, that makes the moon, the black substance of space, those major forces in creation that we are children of. We shift our words or shift our vibrations. That's word shipping or worshipping. We provoke the energy of those spirits that animate creation, and they respond. That's what word shipping is. There's no such thing as phallus worship in black culture. That's idiotic. It can't even exist. It doesn't even fit in the cosmology. That comes from the whites and offspring who have no capacity to align with any force in nature because they repel them just like a magnet repelling another magnet across the table in the same polarities are facing. They can align with the spirits of order. So all they can do is run around and promote their own lust. And they will worship sex and worship drugs and worship anything else because that's who they are. But that's not who we are. So now if you have some black people imitating the whites and their offspring, that's one thing. But if you have the whites and their offspring saying, hey, we're about to go into a ceremony, these people practice a form of phallus worship, that doesn't exist in our culture. So then you have to see what are they really doing? What's their agenda? Because that's not part of our culture.
I mean, I was looking at it and they had these phalluses out there. Clearly, I could see that. And, they was doing things and, all kinds of stuff. So I didn't understand it. So that's why I was trying to get some clarity. Maybe it wasn't, that's why I was saying. It may have not been phallus worship, but I don't know what they was doing.
Well, let me say this. What you have, especially, for example, in West Afuraitkaitnit, Central, and some other areas, when our people migrated from ancient Kemet and Khanid and so forth and established the empires of Ghana and then later Mali and Songhai and things like that, and there's Oyo Empire, these different places, you had two things going on. Like, for example, the Empire of Ghana. That was established by the Akan people, ancient Kanat. The side was Nubia. We reestablished the Kanat Empire, which is called the Empire of Ghana in the western part of the continent for hundreds of years. Then you had invasion. That's why the empire fell. You had Muslim invasion. You had some black people who weren't Muslims who were going along with the Arabs and so forth. They united forces. They wanted to take down a powerful kingdom and all this other stuff. So you have these invasions, and you have some corruption. So you have people involved, some Arabs, but then you have some black people involved in that foolishness. You have black people who were engaged in criminality. That criminality is not allowed in our culture. Our culture is based in harmony with divine order. So the ones who are engaged in criminality, who are exiled from the culture, they will be accepted by white Arabs because they're like, hey, we'll accept you. You can join on with us, and then you can take them down. So the criminals would join along with the white Arabs. They were no longer able to practice ancestral religion. If you engage in criminality, the spirits of order, the deities, they will not possess you. They will not communicate with you. If you engage in criminality, you can't align with the forces of nature. They repel you. The only kind of spirits that you can deal with are deceased spirits of your relatives or non-relatives who are just as criminal as you are. So those who are involved with the Arabs and others, and you'll find this all across the continent now, you'll find that the Muslims all across West Afuraitkaitnit and Central, they may be practicing quote-unquote Islam, but they also traffic in talismans. They traffic in the little witch shrines and so forth, and the little talismans, and people pay them money and they purchase the little talisman shrine and they communicate with the little spirit in the talisman and so forth. The reason why the Muslims are the ones who proliferate in those kinds of talismans is because they can't deal with real ancestral religion, because the actual forces in nature, the deities, don't deal with them. So the only spirits they can communicate with are those criminal, deceased relatives and non-relatives, and that's who they deal with. So then you go and see some of those individuals, and they'll be doing ritual. They're working with these little criminal spirits and getting them to go and steal for somebody or go and make somebody sick and go and do this and do that. Our people know exactly who's who. We know the people who deal with criminal, deceased spirits, just like you know somebody who deals with the criminal in the neighborhood. You know somebody who sells drugs, you know this is a criminal activity. You know somebody who steals, you know who those people are. When they make it a transition, those kind of spirits are still engaged in criminality. You know the people who deal with those deceased criminal spirits, those are the ones we kill in society. Unless they escape that killing or escape that or exile themselves, those are the ones who are allied with the Arabs. So whites and offspring will go and film those people in those little shrines where they'll still deal with the spirits that are connected to talismans, that are connected to discarnate relatives and non-relatives, criminal ancestors and ancestresses who were thieves, rapists, murderers, child molesters when they were alive, and they're working with those little spirits, and they were exiled from the larger Afurakani community who only deal with the actual gods and goddesses, the divinities. They will film those people. They typically won't even film the priests and priestesses who have witch-catching shrines that hunt those people. They won't typically film them. They'll film the ones who are being hunted, and then they'll show them as representing the tradition. You'll find that in the writing. You'll find that in the pictures. You will find that in the, documentary. They will go to the ones who engage in lower-level so-called witchcraft, which is outside of the tradition. That's the corruption or the perversion of the tradition. That's why our priests and priestesses who are have witch-hunting shrines or witch-catching shrines kill those individuals. They don't take them to trial and go to court. They kill them physically and disintegrate their spirits spiritually. They hunt them. That's what they do for a living. Hunt them down and kill them. So they don't film those people. They film the ones who are being hunted and show them as representative of ancestral religion. It's akin to, if you see somebody, some black people in a little Christian church or whatever, and they go and do that on a regular basis, and then you find some black people who found a little white satanic cult, and they go out in the forest and they do little silly little satanic rituals. And of course, Satan is a fictional little character as well, but our people don't know that. Imagine people filming them practicing quote-unquote Satanism and saying, hey, this is the Black Christian Church in America. Now, most Black people who are Christians would say, well, that's not the Christian church. That's what we don't do. But if somebody had a documentary from another country and filmed the little Black Satanists and said, this represents the millions of Black Christians in America, they would balk at that. Black people in America would say, no, that's evil. We put them out the church. You understand? So this is the same thing the whites and their offspring are doing now. That's what they've always done. When you look at white ethnographers for hundreds of years going around the continent writing books and writing papers and everything else, essays, they will always seek to try to find the people who are engaged in criminality and promote that as the culture, whether it's just regular criminality or spiritual criminality. They will promote them as the culture and leave the actual 99+% of the population alone and only deal with the people who are engaged in criminality and say these are the representatives of the culture. That's why you can never trust what the whites and their offspring are putting forward.
Okay, yeah, that do make sense, because when you try to get a lot of stuff for documentary things like that for Africa and trying to get, the traditions and all that, a lot of times they do show some of the worst stuff, you know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of the stuff that you've been putting forth, that, you saying is authentic, you know what I'm saying? They don't really show that too much. What they do show is all that other stuff. That's what I'm saying. So you explained that well. I understand what you're saying. They go find them and try to portray that like that's everybody, and that's what everybody's doing. I got you.
Right.
But thank you, bro.
We did a couple of broadcasts on that called AMANSEM. So when you look on the OGFO page on YouTube, we did a 2-part series on AMANSEM, talking about witchcraft and how to overcome its negative effects and showing and talking about the stuff we're talking about now, how the whites and offspring try to put forward this idea that that's what our tradition is. So we go into some detail about that.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go and watch it.
Okay. So Med, I said we appreciate the call.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so it's after 11:30, so we're going to end the broadcast here. Once again, Yedate for tuning into the broadcast. Please support the Hoodoo Mind Hoodoo Nation Festival this Sunday, October 16th, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Take advantage of the book sale. We have different sales, 20% off, 30% off, and so forth, or even if you just buy one or more books from the page. Remember that sale ends for the 23-book set for $100, so you take advantage of that tonight. But even just the regular book sales, you can take advantage of that as well. So again, Yedase, we thank you for tuning in to the broadcast, and Yedeshiabio, we will meet again.